She's not acted on the vengeful impulse that others might have.
If you'd have acted when you had the chance, Aegon's line would be extinguished, and Luke would be alive.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Episode 1 of House of the Dragon Season 2 is over, and it's left me with even more concern and uncertainty about the direction of the show. So, where do we start? Well, let's begin with the end, the infamous blood and cheese, a son for a son scene, which readers of Fire and Blood were ready for. The execution of this moment fell flat. Why? Well, one reason is we're just not that emotionally invested. Helena, one of the more underutilized characters on the show, was suddenly thrust into a prominent scene. What do we know about Helena aside from her having prophecies that no one pays attention to? Nothing. We needed to lead up to this moment by developing her character, her interactions with her kids, and her family. In season 1, it was hinted that she had a close relationship with Aemond. I was hoping that when he returned after killing Lucerys over Storm's End, that we'd see him perhaps discuss some of his doubts and what really happened with Vhagar to Helena. I mean, wasn't that what part of this scene was all about in the finale? Now, Aemond is back to being more of a one-dimensional, villainous sort of character in episode 1, and it feels like we're losing something with him too. The depth that was hinted at is now just gone. But let's get back to the blood and cheese scene because there's a lot more there that went wrong. It's a very tense situation in the books where they make Helena choose the child that will be killed. It was between the two boys, Jaharis and Maelor. Here they took the easy off ramp and just asked which of the two children was a boy, which they could have found out on their own. So we passed on a more emotional Sophie's choice type of decision. Speaking of decisions, who decided to have Daemon go to King's Landing to engineer this plot? All of this happened from afar in the book, and seeing a hooded Daemon arrive in a city filled with his enemies was verging on parody. He's offering these men money to kill Aemon, whereas the biggest prize is standing right in front of them. It's nonsensical to believe that anyone would walk into a situation where they could quickly become the Green's prize prisoner. And it's not just the people he's approaching that could turn him in, but anyone that sees through his carefully designed disguise. In Fire and Blood, George explained Daemon's plan this way. Let it not be forgotten that in his youth Daemon Targaryen had been prince of the city, his face and laugh familiar to every cut-purse, whore, and gambler in Fleabottom. The prince still had friends in low places of King's Landing and followers among the gold cloaks. Unbeknownst to King Aegon, the Hand, or the Queen Dowager, he had allies at court as well, even on the Green Council, and one other go-between, a special friend who he trusted utterly, who knew the wine sinks and rat pits that festered in the shadow of the Red Keep, as well as Daemon himself once had, and moved easily in the shadows of the city. To this pale stranger he reached out now, by secret way, to set a terrible vengeance into motion. Amidst the stews of Fleabottom, Prince Daemon's go-between found suitable instruments. This is how it should have played out in the series. Instead, we had Daemon ridiculously holding out a bag of coins to some stranger. You just can't have Daemon go to King's Landing, period. It was a poor decision by the writers that wasn't needed for the plot. The book version of Blood and Cheese is far better than this adaptation. Some people disingenuously claim that those unhappy with the TV version have a bloodlust and they wanted to see the decapitation of Jaharis. This is so ridiculous. Ned's execution was done flawlessly and we didn't actually see his death. What we did want in this scene was the same sense of horror and suspense as was described in the book version. Alicent was gagged and bound, and Blood and Cheese waited for Helena to arrive with her children, and then forced Helena to make a choice between the two boys. So what we got wasn't Blood and Cheese, but the imitation version. It was funny, too, how they just allowed Helena to leave while all this was going on. To make matters worse, Helena runs into her mother's room where Alicent is having sex with Kristen Cole, and both the former queen and the Lord Commander of the King's Guard have not yet mastered the use of door locks. And this weird, awkward moment is the perfect final bookend for the failed execution of the blood and cheese scene. Incidentally, and it's a smaller point, but I think it's bigger too because it once again accentuates the failure of the show to fully develop its characters and their motivations. But I think showing Allison finally crossing that line and starting a relationship with Kristen Cole after being the proper person who followed all the rules in contrast to her friend Rhaenyra, something like this they need to show. But no, instead we jump into the middle of her relationship with Kristen. Paths taken are more important than just destinations, and we see it too much on the show, where stuff just sort of happens and we're left to fill in the blanks. What's funny is that the best parts of this episode for me were Aegon scenes. Tom Glynn Carney is doing an excellent job in the role, but he was also given the best material of anyone in this episode. You see some nuance in his character. He's not just some one dimensional villain. He has a desire to please the people, and it was Otto who jumped in to put limitations on his generosity. And I also thought the small council scene with his son was great. And that's what this show desperately needs, more of those character building moments that let you see different sides of individuals. And a big place where they failed in this was Jace's brief stop in Winterfell to meet Craig and Stark. As filming updates and spoilers came out, I expected less and less from this. I really wanted to see 2 episodes of Jace in Winterfell. Finally, I thought it looked like we'd be down to a couple of scenes there, and they even underdelivered on that. There was no bonding between the two. If anything, it was even mildly adversarial, with Cregan saying at least Jace wasn't threatening him with his dragon, like Aegon the Conqueror did with Torrhen Stark. And with the huge buildup we had last season about the Long Night and Viserys explaining the prophecy to Rhaenyra, we didn't even get that discussion between Cregan and Jace. It was just all a device for Jace to be notified of Lucerys' death. Cregan is going to play a significant role at the end of the story, and they dropped the ball here in a place where we could have had character building for him and for Jace. While I have considerable complaints about episode 1, overall, the show is still good. The production is top notch and most of the acting is excellent. What keeps it from being great, though, is that some characters lack the sort of depth that we had in the early seasons of Game of Thrones. Even more well defined ones make decisions that aren't adequately explained and motivations become unclear. And this makes for a more shallow journey through an excellent story that should be heart wrenching and have a strong impact at each of its critical moments. I expect the Battle of Rook's Rest, which is coming in the middle of the season, to be phenomenal. They've shown that visually they do the big stuff very well. How much character development will be a casualty of the shortened season and the rush to the next big event remains to be seen. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like button. If you're interested in more on House of the Dragon and A Song of Ice and Fire, listen to Caraxes and subscribe. I want to thank everyone for watching, and I'll see you soon.